Hey everybody. Hi, welcome. Welcome to weekly live Q&A. And I'm so happy that you've chosen to spend some time here with us tonight. If you are here to receive support or to give support, then you are welcome here. If you are a cyberbully or you have nothing better to do than to pick on people who are trying to heal from trauma, then you're not welcome here. And you will be blocked and banned and otherwise discarded permanently. And this is a safe place for people who want to come to receive support and give support. And just want to be really clear about that right from the get-go. Welcome, welcome if this is your first time here. I'm going to go ahead and just read through some brief public service announcements, okay? Welcome to another week of No More Shame, live Q&A for adult survivors of child abuse, incest, human trafficking, narcissistic abuse, complex trauma, cult abuse, anyone living with PTSD or CPTSD symptoms. And I even had, I had one of our friends a couple weeks ago ask me if this community is safe for anyone living with DID. And the answer is yes, although I do have periods of dissociation personally. This channel is from a lived experience perspective. I'm not living currently with DID, even though I do have experience with bouts of dissociation. So this is a safe space for you, but the channel does not specialize in discussing dissociative identity disorder. So you're definitely welcome here though. So I'm just going to read the rest of our PSAs and then get right going tonight. Our topic is our trauma narrative and our healthy narrative, and we're crafting that narrative and we're learning the different nuances and the importance of giving ourselves permission to add to and subtract from our narrative. So I would love to hear your questions. We're going to answer a lot of last week's questions that we didn't get to. And I would love to know over in the chat box what support you have or advice that you have for our community members on the topic of our healthy narrative and our trauma narrative and crafting that narrative. So please take a few moments if you have not done so already and read the video description if you're here for the live Q&A. If you're here to participate in the weekly discussion, please pause and read the video description so you know what we're talking about and the angle we're coming from and what this place is and what this place isn't. So thanks for being here, especially if this is your first time. We're so glad that you've chosen to be here. And if you're watching a replay, welcome. Please comment below the video if the comment section is open. And if you're here for the live discussion, then please comment in the chat box and support one another and welcome anyone that's new with just love and acceptance. Again, these videos, you guys know this already. These videos are from a lived experience perspective, and they're never a substitute for professional health care. I'm not a doctor or a psychologist. All the videos on this channel are from a coaching perspective. They're me openly discussing research that I personally conducted over the course of my 17-year healing journey. Some of the topic research may also have been conducted by some of our interns or community members. And as always, the chats and the videos are not ever intended to be a therapeutic service or a diagnosis. We always want you to seek a qualified, experienced professional. And trigger warning, tonight's video and the chat will discuss abuse, trafficking, complex PTSD, and oftentimes the questions sent in by our community members are graphic in nature. So please practice excellent self-care while participating and step away from the chat box and the video if you're triggered. Dry mouth, sweaty palms, sick stomach, anything that is triggering for you. You deserve excellent care. So if you're in crisis, we really want you to reach out and get the professional help that you deserve. So please dial 911 or contact our friends over at RAIN, the Rape, Abuse, Incest National Network, at 1-800-656-HOPE, H-O-P-E, if you're here in the United States or in Canada. You can also reach them. They have a live chat box on their website for anyone globally, and that's at rainn.org. And if you prefer to text, you can get immediate support via text message from our friends over at the Crisis Text Line. You can go onto their website, crisistextline.org, or you can text the word START to 741-741 and a text conversation will start and you can receive the support you deserve. So we have suicide prevention resource as well if you happen to be living with either active suicidal ideation or passive suicidal ideation. We have our friends over at the Suicide Prevention Lifeline. That's suicidepreventionlifeline.org. And they can be reached at 1-800-273-8255. All of this information that I've shared with you is in the chat box. And I do hope and ask you, please, to go to the chat box, highlight that information, copy it, and paste it into something on social media. Paste it here in the chat box if you don't have access to Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or any other social media platform. But by you sharing that information, the Suicide Prevention Lifeline.org, you could save a life and it doesn't cost you anything. So if you made it here for live weekly Q&A, if you would give this video a thumbs up, that would be amazing. And many thanks to our family, our friendly family of choice, the Village of Amazing Humans, who make this weekly event possible, which includes our newest intern, Lisa. Matt, who is not here tonight. We want to be sending him a lot of love and prayers as he's grieving the loss of his father. So please tweet him at Surviving My Past. Oh, actually, no, it's at Beyond Your Past, I believe. Maybe it is at Surviving My Past still. I'm not sure if he switched over his branding yet. But please send a tweet over to Matt at Surviving My Past or Beyond Your Past, whichever it might be. And send him your love and hugs and prayers and encouragement and while he is grieving the loss of his father. Thanks, as always, to Jody B. and Kalisha, who they both do a lot of things in our community. Kalisha runs the Survivor Community Instagram account. Jody tweets out encouraging memes every day, all day, and is really active in suicide prevention. And then special thanks to Harriet, because she's a rock star. And thanks to Heather, who's a fierce advocate in this community and for the supporters of this community. And thank you to Dawn, who is a moderator here tonight. Thanks to Jack for doing Storify, and Poppy, who does all of the amazing GIFs or GIFs, whichever you prefer. I say GIF. So again, this topic tonight will be triggering for anyone who has experienced abuse, childhood maltreatment of any kind. Step away from the video and the chat box and receive the crisis support that you deserve if you're triggered. You deserve it. Hashtag because you are worth it. Because we are worth it. Everyone who arrives here tonight is deserving of unconditional love, acceptance, welcoming, and safety. Please always be kind and welcoming to every single person who arrives here with us. And if there are trolls that show up and they're using all kinds of crazy vulgar language, then do your best to block them or report them. That's all we can possibly do. So if you do choose to be unkind to people who show up here to receive support, you'll be blocked. You'll be put in timeout. You'll be otherwise removed. And we are here only to cultivate and maintain an environment of kindness and acceptance and love, because we are worthy of that. And lastly, thank you for all of you guys for being here and for supporting one another. You guys are really the reason why this community is so beautiful and powerfully healing. And I'm honored to know you guys. I know there are only about 40 of you here so far tonight. Usually there's a lot more of you. So I want to say thanks for being here. You guys are amazing. And today is World Kindness Day. So in honor of World Kindness Day, I'm grateful to be here, first of all, you guys. And I'm grateful that so many of the people in our community are kind to one another and to others who come here, and nobody knows them. That people show up unannounced and they introduce themselves to us on a weekly basis. And you guys are so welcoming and so amazing. And I'm really grateful for that. So thank you. So as we transition into the topic of crafting our trauma narrative, I just want to really quickly touch on some things that we discussed over the last 2 weeks, because this is week 3 of crafting our trauma narrative and also discussing a healthy narrative. Many of the questions have been surrounding the topic of When do we transition from a trauma narrative into a healthier narrative, and how is it that we can do that? And many of us, like we discussed last week, I received a lot of emails from a lot of people who really resonate with the fact that we, as survivors, oftentimes feel the need to share every single piece of our trauma narrative with someone who asks us about it, because we were often not believed when we were kids if we tried to speak up about our trauma. And then we were also, not only were we not believed, but the people who perpetrated against us were dishonest. And so in an effort for us to be 100% honest 100% of the time and not turn into our abusers, we want to make sure that we're very specific and we give an account for exactly how it went, and we overshare. And sometimes that is appropriate, and sometimes it is re-traumatizing for us because we're kind of not there yet in the relationship with someone, and then we're sharing so much of our truth. It may be a little bit premature to share all of our truth. Remember, not everyone, someone might need to hear this again, so I'm going to share this again, but not everyone deserves to hear our story. Not everyone deserves to hear my truth. There are people in this world that will never be deserving of hearing my truth. I'm not saying that because like I'm all that and a bag of chips, you know, like that's not why I'm saying that. I'm saying that not everyone, first of all, is in a place to receive the truth that is my life. And it might not be in my best interest for me to share my truth with certain people. Many people prefer to numb stuff, avoid, or pretend that bad things don't happen in this world because it causes them to feel really uncomfortable. For instance, this is just an example, and then we're going to move into answering people's questions. But this is a perfect example of how things are skirted over and sort of pretending that things are like, you know, bad things don't happen in certain areas of the country or the world, right? So I received, probably like a month ago or something, I received a small package in the mail. And it was from one of our community members, and it was so sweet. And I received it in the mail. My husband picked it up for me at the P.O. box, and he said, "Who's that from?" I said, "Oh, it's from one of our community members. They drew this for me. They, you know, it's artwork that they drew." And he said, "Oh, where do they live?" And I said, "They live in Wisconsin." And he's like, "Good people come from Wisconsin. Good people in the Midwest. That's where like a lot of the good people come from." Like, he's just joking, of course, but it happens to be a community member that lives in Wisconsin, which my husband's from Minnesota. So it was just kind of like him going, "Yep, there's some amazing people that live up there," you know, because his family's all from up there. And there are amazing people all over the world. I see it all the time. There's also some pretty like sociopathic, psychopathic, not very healthy people that live all over the world also. But it was just a comment that he made. And it was just very light. He's keeping it very light. That's my husband. He's keeping it light. And then he asked, they're from your survivor community, or are they a family member, or are they a survivor? And I said, "No, they're a survivor." And you could see him get just a little bit sad. You know, like I could tell that the people pleaser in me almost tried to like manage his emotions, right? Like to try to skirt over it or whatever. And I said, "Yeah, I said, you know, I know you joke around like you're just joking, or you're just like keeping it light about how there's really great people from Wisconsin. But this particular person happened to be trafficked by their grandfather, and that all happened in Wisconsin." And so he was just like, "Yeah, so," and like changed the subject right away. So again, I'm not saying my husband doesn't deserve to hear my truth, because he's my husband, and I'm honest with him, and he knows about my trauma. He knows what's happened in my life, and he knows that I'm fighting like hell to get better and heal, right? I'm chasing after my health, and I'm attaining it, and it's amazing. And I'm helping a lot of other people, and that feels good. So, but it would have probably been a better day for him had he not needed to admit to himself that that great area of the country where so many wonderful people lived, right under his nose, you know, there's severe abuse and exploitation that's going on. Our story is not popular, folks. People do not want to believe that this country, this blessed country we live in, you know, here we just celebrated Veterans Day, and I'm so thankful to so many members of my family that have served our country, and they fight for our freedom, and you know, they go and they protect other people in humanitarian efforts. They help people in other countries protect their freedom, attain their freedom for the first time sometimes. I'm really grateful for that. But, you know, I would be remiss to not acknowledge that there are some dark, dark things that happen in our country. They happen all over the world, and the United States is not exempt from abuse and human trafficking and exploitation and lending out of children and giving away your children to people to get them off your hands and selling them to people. And I read this story recently. It's a true account of this man sold his daughter for livestock. He needed livestock for his farm because his farm produced a lot of money, but he had like a whole bunch of his animals had died. And so he sold his daughter for this livestock. And it's like, this is real. Like, you can't make this shit up. Like, this is not fake. Not fake news, right? So it's painful, you guys. Not everybody deserves to hear our story. Not everyone can handle the truth. I feel like there's that movie. I gotta be careful with my movie references, by the way. I got like chewed out and thumbs down like 5 times because I mentioned an actor last week that I didn't know was like a, you know, person that is a pedophile or that is a sexual abuser. Like, I need to be really careful with my movie references. So I will not go on to my movie reference that I was just about ready to give. You can't handle the truth. So not everybody, even though we're here and we're crafting our trauma narrative and we're going to be adding to and subtracting from and moving towards a healthier narrative so that we're not re-triggered and re-traumatized by our own narrative, not everybody needs to hear it. Not everybody deserves to hear it. Not everybody is the person that we should be sharing with. So there is safety in sharing within the context of safe community, within people that you know have either lived your pain or are there because they are willing to be in a place of support. So I hope that makes a lot of sense for you guys on where it is that we're going with this video. I am here to support you and answer your questions about crafting your narrative, whether that's through journaling, whether that's through blogging, whether that's through art, however it is that you're looking to craft that narrative. I'm here to help you, and I want to answer your questions. So I'm gonna read some of your questions here right now. I am so glad you guys are all here. Okay, so we're going to start with some questions from last week that weren't mentioned. So I want to say really quickly, I want to say thank you to Jack, thank you Willow, thank you Joey, thank you Monica, thank you Deborah, thank you Shannon, thank you Billy, thank you JW Suicides, thank you Pretty Lou, Kira, Angela, Sarah. And then for tonight, I want to say thank you to John Harvey, Heroes Don't Wear Capes, Monica Shields, Angela M, Beryl Hen, and Angela M again. So I'm going to do my best to get every single question answered tonight as much as I possibly can. But I like to give enough, you know, I need to give each question like the time it deserves. You know what I'm saying? And if I don't get to your question tonight, we will indeed. I've received a lot of emails from you guys telling me you like these longer series. you'd prefer that we have like a longer series that's on one topic than me rush through anything. So let's see. Jack says, when I journal, I'm assuming this is crafting your trauma narrative, I tend to brood, stew, and otherwise linger in a trigger. How can I journal more effectively and not stay stuck? Ooh, this is a really good question, you guys. So many of us, when we begin to journal, there's this editor that lives in us, right? And if we're crafting our trauma narrative, and when we're actually journaling anything, we need to give the editor the day off. We need to send them on a coffee break. So when we get stuck on brooding or stewing or stuck on something, what we need to do is we need to shift into, I'm really having like an itchy nose. Like I feel like I'm gonna sneeze like at any moment. So if I sneeze in your guys' face, I'm really sorry. What's gonna help that, Jack, is giving your editor send your editor on a coffee break. We need to shift into a place of stream of consciousness. There's no editing, there's no right, no wrong, no mistakes, no nothing. You really allow yourself to go there. Yes, it's painful. Our tendency as humans is to avoid that pain, to focus on something different. And so rather than numbing or stuffing or avoiding or focusing on the trigger that's coming up, just push through it if you possibly can. Push through it, practice some self-care, practice excellent self-care, but get into a place of stream of consciousness where you're writing anything that comes to mind. You know, the flowers are pink, the sky is blue, the ocean is beautiful, the mountains are green, I see a balloon, I see a light, I see the carpet, I need to sweep the floor, I wished I would have eaten breakfast, I wonder what I'll make for dinner. Like, allow yourself to just write, you know, and then come back when you're at a place where you're not feeling triggered. Push through it, move through it, rather than going over it, under it, or around it. And that should definitely help you. That definitely helps me, and it helps my clients as well. Let me see. Willow says, are there particular ways to reframe or counteract the phrases that are constant reels playing, such as, there must be something wrong with me? Ooh, I'm channeling my inner Richard right now. There must be something wrong with me. I also get yelled at by people in the comment section whenever I mention Richard Grannon, because they tell me he's a narcissist and that I need to stop talking about him. He's actually a client of mine, and he's become a friend, and I know he may present narcissistically on camera, but he's not a narcissist in person, because we've hung out, and he's amazing and he's kind. So, oh no, there's going to be tons of ding, ding, dinging, because I have a thread going. Let me see if I can get out of here. Let me get out of my messages app, close it out, you guys. I'm participating in a potluck for Thanksgiving like I do every year. And so they're all talking about what we're bringing. And so it's going to be like ding, 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 ding. So if it does that every couple moments, I'm so sorry. So yeah, he's not a narcissist in person. He may present that way on camera, but he's not. So the tapes, Willow, the tapes that play, there must be something wrong with me, there must be something wrong with me. So those are shame. And so the only thing that counteracts shame is finding a way to show ourselves compassion. And if we can't find any compassion for ourselves, the best way to find that compassion is, and be able to apply it to ourselves eventually, is to be compassionate towards someone else, because we don't normally lack in compassion for others. We normally lack in compassion for ourselves. So Willow, the first thing I would love for you to do is to locate whose voice that is. We need to somehow find whose voice that is. Where did you first learn that there was something possibly wrong with you? I don't know your whole story, but I'm guessing it was a primary caregiver perhaps. And so if it started that young, then we're going to have to go back a ways, right? So we're going to go back a ways, and then what we're going to do is we're going to talk back to those voices. We're going to talk back to the negative voices, and we're going to you can channel your inner fill in the blank. Someone who's positive and affirming and encouraging and championing, so that you can eventually take on the voice of whoever you channel, that inner whomever, right? If you need to channel your inner Athena cheering you on and championing you and telling you that you're amazing and you're worth it and you deserve to heal and you're awesome and you're encouraging and you're kind and you're smart and you're generous and you do so much and you're so kind to so many people and you're healing and you're doing so much, like, if that's what you need to do, do it. Channel your inner Poppy. Channel your inner heroes don't wear capes. Channel someone that is positive and affirming and encouraging, and talk back to those negative voices that say something wrong, that something is wrong with you. And the trickiest thing is when those voices, they trick you to make you think that it's actually your voice. And that actually isn't your voice. It's actually someone else's. So we need to find out who that first person was that made you somehow believe that something was wrong with you. And we're going to challenge that voice and we're going to talk back to it. So, and then once we do that, it will become a habit, right? It will have a better likelihood that it could become a habit. And we'll be able to craft your trauma narrative in a way that makes sense and feels like it's in alignment with who you are and what you believe in. So I hope that's helpful. These are great questions, you guys. You guys always ask the best questions. Joey says, when writing my story, how do I keep haters and people who think I'm lying preventing me from continuing on with my truth? How do I keep it from causing me more pain? Ooh, oh my goodness, this is such a good question, Joey. So we are not going to be able to control other people. All we can do is talk back to those voices that are negative. If the voices are the haters and we know who they are, we need to like find a way to either draw them and make them silly and like draw ourselves bigger, speaking truth over them and like telling them to be quiet and to leave us alone, or just talking truth rather than their lies, right? But we need to challenge those voices. Challenge the voices, challenge the voices, whether it's through journaling, whether it's through positive self-talk, affirmations, making a list, building up our good pile so that the bad pile shrinks, like whatever it is that we do, we need to challenge the negativity. We can't let the negativity just blossom and bloom. Negativity will blossom and bloom like weeds. Weeds can grow anywhere, right? And so what we need to do is we need to talk back to it, and we need to just nip it and challenge it. Like, where do you get your truth? Like you're saying that, let's see what it says here. Let's see. So if there's a hater who says that you're lying, like talk back to it. I'm lying. So wait a second. So you're saying I'm lying. So what am I lying about? So this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this, and this happened. Oh, and this is still happening to this day. Like right now. I'm lying? Like take a look around. Like you're the delusional one. I'm not lying. I'm telling the truth. She still does this, and every day this happens, and this is what happened to me, and this is what happened to so-and-so, and I'm not lying. So, you know, find a way to talk back to those voices so that we can move forward in crafting our trauma narrative, especially in a way that supports us, that supports our mental health, right? That's the biggest challenge right there. Crafting our trauma narrative in a way that supports us. So Hunter says, oh, did I say thank you to Hunter earlier? I hope I did. Hunter says, hi, Athena. Is it a marker of a truly healthy narrative when it withstands invalidating and minimizing statements without being warped by them? I would say that if you are having people try to invalidate you and minimize your truth, and it's not affecting you, and your confidence is not being warped by that, and you are withstanding it, that is definitely an indicator that you are healing and that you are crafting a healthy narrative. And your truth doesn't define you. Your past doesn't define you. Your trauma doesn't define you. Yes, it happened, but it doesn't dictate your future. So yes, the answer is yes, 1,000,000 times yes, Hunter. Great questions, you guys. Monica says, how do you craft a healthy narrative without minimizing what you've been through again? Yes, I love this. I was hoping someone was going to ask this question. So one would argue, healthy narrative, Athena, how can you possibly say that what happened to me is healthy? Like, what are you saying? Isn't trauma narrative versus healthy narrative, like, isn't one a lie and one is truth? I mean, seriously. So that's not the case. The case is wrapped up in the question that Monica just asked. By the way, does anybody else, are anybody else on a Mac? I keep having these reminders popping up that I need to install stuff ever since the new iOS came out. It's driving me crazy because it's like popping up in everything I'm doing. Oh my goodness, sorry. Squirrel. So the way we craft a narrative that is healthy without denying or even like deleting or skirting over or minimizing what it is that we've been through is we craft the trauma narrative first and we go into great detail, 100% of the details. And I was wearing this and it smelled like this and this is what was going on and this is all the details. And we get it out. And then once we've gotten out all of the ick, we step back, we accept the reality of what is, and then we look at our life and we ask ourselves, in what ways is my current life reflective of what happened to me, and what other things does my life reflect right now? Is most of my focus on old stuff that I'm still healing from? Because if that's the case, it's okay. If most of my life right now on a daily basis is wrapped up in healing from things that were done to me, it doesn't mean that I'm not healing. It just means that I'm in a stage of my recovery where it's still a primary focus of mine. Okay, I want to be really clear on that. There's no best place to be. There's no, I know it's called a trauma narrative and a healthy narrative, but I'm not saying that if you've survived trauma, you can't be healthy. And if you're crafting a healthy narrative, you never lived through trauma. So I want to be really, really clear on that. I haven't even gotten an email regarding that, which normally I would get something like that by now. So what I'm saying is you get out all the ick, you get out all the trauma, you get out all the details so that you don't skirt it over, so that you don't deny it, so that you don't stuff it, you don't numb it, you don't avoid it, you don't make it pretty, you don't put a bow on it, right? Not everyone's story has a bow on it. Not everyone's story has a bow on it yet, and there are some stories that may never get a bow. The world loves the bow. They like a pretty little bow. They like the underdog to overcomer stories. They love the rags to riches narrative. They love the story of overcoming. They love the champion that overcame irrefutable odds. They love it, right? They love it, they love it, they love it. But guess what? Not everybody is gonna have a bow. I might never have a bow, okay? The bow that's on top of your life story, you're the only one that needs to see the bow. The world wants to put a bow on it, and that's how they minimize it all, okay? The bow is the minimizer sometimes, unless, of course, you've written it all out and you've acknowledged and you've bore witness to the truth and the pain and what it is that really happened, because it deserves to be told. Your story, your truth deserves to be acknowledged. And if we don't acknowledge it, it will continue to knock and continue to show up and throw itself out in the middle of places that we don't need it or want it. Like when we're trying to apply for a job, or we're trying to get involved in a new relationship, or our grandbabies are born, or we decide to move across country, or we have a pet that ends up on our doorstep. Like different changes in our daily schedule will bring up old stuff that we never gave words to, that we never gave life to. It deserves to be told. It deserves to be acknowledged. So, Monica, I would say that the way you keep from minimizing your truth by crafting a healthy narrative is by telling and crafting your trauma narrative with as much grace and depth as possible. Acknowledge every detail. Talk about every feeling. Whatever you deem worthy of talking about and sharing and acknowledging. No one else gets to craft that narrative for you. And then when you decide to share or craft your narrative in a way that it makes sense to who you are now and it's in alignment with what your life looks like now, it doesn't feel disingenuous. It doesn't feel inauthentic. Why? Because you told the whole truth. You crafted the whole truth. You wrote it all out. Every blood, every sweat, every tear, all of it. It deserved to be told, and you told it. And then it is. It is what it is, and it's the truth. And it doesn't need to be in the forefront of your mind all the time and in the forefront of your life out for everyone to see. It can just be something sacred in there for you and something that reminds you of what to do, what not to do, things to look out for, things to be mindful of. And then we craft a healthy narrative, which all healthy narrative means is that we craft our story in a way that our trauma isn't the main character of the story any longer. Our abuse, our trafficking, our exploitation, our trauma is no longer the main character of the story. It has a supporting role, perhaps something that was spoken about, and now we've given birth to new life, who we are now, the community we're in, the job we're seeking, the family we desire, the places we want to travel, the money we desire to earn, the health we're chasing after, the relationships we desire to cultivate. Sometimes, after we craft our trauma narrative, and we give ourselves permission to add and subtract from that, the narrative that we craft along the way, in which our trauma no longer plays a central role, our life begins to shift. We feel things differently. We see things differently. We show up differently in the world. So I'm really passionate about this, you guys. I hope it's not annoying. Sometimes when I'm really passionate, I get nasty grams and people are really annoyed with me. But this is something I'm so passionate about because it's been very helpful for me. I hope that was helpful, Monica. Deborah says, how does one put together a narrative when you are authoring a book? Such a good question, Deborah. So that depends on what kind of book you want to write. So you guys, as you know, there are different types of books, and I've participated in different types of books. So Deborah, I have some ideas for you. So there are plenty of people out there. I'm wearing a new blouse, and it's like it's bunching up in certain areas. So I'm really sorry that I'm playing with my hair a lot. Deborah, there are many groups and places and people that what they do what Rachel and Bobby and I did, and they gather a whole bunch of artists to do an anthology on a topic, right? And so if you have a deep desire to tell your story and get it out of you, but you don't want it to be like, let's say you're a budding author. This is a good example, Deborah. Let's say you're a budding author and you're really, really, really looking to write, I don't know, graphic novels. You want to take pictures and have like a comic book sort of graphic novel career. Or let's say you want to be the author of different coffee table books, but you happen to be an adult survivor of human trafficking or childhood sexual abuse or cult abuse or religious abuse or some other form of childhood maltreatment, okay? So you don't necessarily, for instance, want to spend a whole bunch of time, or maybe you do, crafting, doing an outline, doing a book proposal, doing all your chapters, hiring an editor, doing your cover art, all these different things, a literary agent, all of the things that you do when you're looking to write a book, right? So let's say if your end goal, or you feel yourself wanting to go into the world of being a published author, and that's your career. Let's say you participate in someone's anthology on the topic of childhood sexual abuse or human trafficking or exploitation or childhood maltreatment or PTSD or CPTSD or whatever it is that you feel strongly about, that you want to write about, that needs to get out of you. But it's not necessarily something that you want it to be like your forever. You know what I mean? So if that's the case, then find someone that is looking for stories. One of the best ways to do this is to search online for blogs, people who run blogs. And then sometimes the bloggers are part of the collective. Like, good example. So there's a gal, she runs a blog called Feminine Collective. I believe her last name is Anderson. Is it Amy Anderson? No, it's not Amy. Oh my goodness. Now I can't remember her first name. Dang it, she's a model. But anyway, she runs a blog called Feminine Collective, and she runs this whole blog on women's issues and things that are feminine, right? And so let's say she was gonna do an anthology that was all on women's issues. So you perhaps could contribute a story. You can use your name or you can use a pen name. Pen name is always something fantastic if you're really looking to write a story and you want to get it out there. Or you can even write it, change some names and some locations and things so that nothing is recognizable, and then you can label it fiction but have it be like your real story. Some of the best fiction is actually truth, just so you know. So those are some ways, Deborah. I participated in several anthologies, and then I wrote a couple of my own books, and now I'm getting ready to write another book, and I'm kind of going in a different direction. And so I'm kind of like, ooh, what do I want to do? How do I want to handle this? You know? So one way for sure to get that sort of thing, if you're crafting your trauma narrative, but it's not something that you want to write about for a really long time, then I would look for someone that is doing an anthology, or try guest posting on someone's blog just to try it out instead of diving headfirst into the whole book situation. Because it's a lot to write a book and to organize chapters and do an outline, and you have your table of contents, and then you have your, your cover page, you have your copyright, you have ISBN, you have Library of Congress, you have barcodes, you have, sources, and, oh my goodness, there's just so much that goes into publishing. And depending on where you're at in your author career, and if this is a topic that you want to write about forever, if it is, then just write it and put it out there, and you can join different blogging clubs, like for authors, where they all like read each other's work and they share one another's work. And then there's also a whole community over on Goodreads. I think it's good. Is it goodreads.org or goodreads.com? I'm not 100% sure if it's .org or .com now. But anyway, those are just a few ideas, Deborah, but that's a really, really, really good question. And so many of us here in this community are creatives, and so many of us are authors. So I hope this is helpful. You guys ask the best questions. Shannon says, how do I work in trauma narrative when worst abuse may have been pre-verbal? Ooh, okay, so Shannon, what I think you're asking is, how do I work on my trauma narrative when, like, some of the worst part of my abuse may have been pre-verbal? So I have someone in my life who I've known for probably, I don't know, like 12 years now, and she's amazing, and she has the majority of her really, really horrific abuse was in fact pre-verbal, and she did some expressive therapies, and she did some painting. And what she did is she did these different painting projects, and they ended up being, one of them was the cover of her book, and the others were sprinkled throughout her book. And she was able to write about the feelings that she had when she was remembering the pre-verbal memories, but she doesn't have words or a nice, neat, pretty timeline. Many of us in this community, our lives were colored with trauma off and on from our first cognizant memory until, just recently. or you could still be in a traumatic situation or in an abusive relationship and you're wanting to get out. So in that case, what I mentioned last week and the week before, I mentioned sticky notes. You write down feelings or ideas, and then you get the poster board and you get all the sticky notes and you put them in random order all around. You just allow yourself, again, stream of consciousness. You write words down and you do sticky notes, sticky notes, sticky notes, sticky notes, sticky notes. And then as you see this big cluster of words and you start to sort of have different feelings, you write about the feelings that you're having about these different words and different memories that are coming to you. And what ends up coming about could be short story, it could be poetry. Rarely is it going to be like a novel or something, you know, full, like from beginning until end, like someone's like autobiographical or biographical story. If you are in a place where you don't have a lot of your pre-verbal memories, it's going to take a while for that to happen. It's a process. So I want to ask you to be patient with yourself, because you could in fact have it be a novel, but you're going to need to start with words. You're going to need to start with something. You need to start with drawing, with painting, with having a cluster, with having something that is a little more free-flowing than an actual timeline that's linear. Because healing's not linear. Trauma, if your whole life was colored with trauma from pre-verbal until just recently, it's not linear. It's not linear, and it's going to drive you crazy, and you're going to be frozen. You're going to have analysis paralysis, and you're going to have perfection paralysis, and you're not going to be like, well, I can't remember the exact date. Was it February? Was it March? Was it when I was 3? Was it when I was 4? I can't remember. Where were we living? And then if you focus on it, then a lot of other things will elude you. So if you allow yourself to attack it as though it were a project, like poster board with the sticky notes or a painting or whatever, start somewhere. Just start somewhere. Just start. Like, don't stay in perfection paralysis or analysis paralysis if your abuse was pre-verbal. So I hope that was helpful. That was really helpful for me personally. There's also some workshops that you can attend. I don't know where you live, but there are some people that have like trauma-informed workshops, and you actually work with like clay, and it's like ooey gooey, like kind of like Play-Doh, and there's different textures, and there's something about the moist texture or like the different textures that feel like, you know, warm, cool, squishy, whatever, that actually it's a regression. Like there are younger parts in you. Sometimes perhaps pre-verbal parts in you that will sort of show up, and you'll have a higher likelihood of accessing those memories. But make sure you do it in a trauma-informed environment. There needs to be balance. It's not something you can just dive headfirst in, because there can really be re-traumatization, secondary trauma that happens if you're not really mindful and careful to do that in a trauma-informed environment, or practice excellent self-care. Make sure that there are trauma-informed individuals around you. Don't just go to like anybody. Because I've done this, I'm just telling you guys I've done this. The worst thing you can do is be like, I know what I want to do. I want to go to a healing workshop. That's what I'll do. I'll go to a healing workshop. And you go to these like a healing workshop where it's all these healers and Reiki practitioners and yoga, you know, Pilates type people, which all of them are amazing, beautiful souls. They're wonderful. But not everybody is trauma informed. They'll tell you, oh, that's just something you need to release and let go of, and place it in a bag in the corner and tie the bag with a ribbon in the color of your choice, and then we will set the bag aside. And you're like, fuck you. Like, I can't even find it, let alone put it in a bag and find a colorful ribbon. Like, no. But what they're talking about is like something that happened perhaps like last week. Like, my boss is really frustrating me, and he doesn't understand that this is a project that I'm really passionate about, and I think I might be the best person for this particular project, but my coworker got chosen instead of me. And so then they sit there with that. Well, what does that bring up for you? Well, that brings up feelings of you know, being rejected. Well, when else did you feel rejected? Well, you know, a couple years ago, I went out on this date and I really liked this person. And we're talking about things that are like now and like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And they're not capital T trauma. They're not childhood attachment, forming of the brain, you know, primary caregiver, like brain damaging neglect, like ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, like people that are at some healing workshops, some of them are not equipped to handle us because they don't even know. Like, you only know what you know. You only know what you know. And if you don't know childhood trauma, you don't know that some people are going to show up at your healing workshop with childhood trauma if you're not a childhood trauma survivor. So just a heads up there, folks, like be careful, because that's happened to me before. And then I blamed myself and thought I was the problem, and you know how that goes. My goodness, it just makes everything like more painful. So I hope that was helpful, Shannon. Great questions, you guys. Billy says, I'm trying to take steps to have permission to talk through past issues. But because of the way I was raised with spiritual emphasis on being punished by God or talking outside the family, I don't know how to do this safely. I relate to so much of your story, Athena. How do you do this without crossing the line spiritually? Ooh, this is such a good question, Billy. Okay, so last week we had some questions about the whole God thing, like how, like, is it like a difficult situation bringing God into your healing? And so what Billy is saying here is he was raised in an environment where you don't talk about stuff. Like it's a sin. That's called gossip. I'm assuming, and Billy, if I'm putting words in your mouth, so please correct me, okay? So if you're raised in a spiritual environment or a religious environment where silence is honored, and if you speak, that's shunned, then first of all, it's not scriptural. Because the last time I checked, the God that I learned about in the Bible, and I could go off on a big tangent right here, and I really just don't want to get up on my soapbox and turn this into a religious discussion, because girl can do that. I can preach a sermon right now, and I just don't want to. So what I'm going to say is, you grow up in an environment where it's religious. What's modeled for you is silence and respect your elders, and you know, basically suck it up, buttercup. You don't talk about anything outside the family. You will defame the family name. You'll defame God. And this is how a lot of abuse happens in the church. There are many people in our community, our larger global community, that were sexually abused in the church by a pastor or by a clergy member, by a youth pastor, by a worship leader, by someone that worked at the church, custodian, you name it, like someone in the church, okay? But they were not believed because they brought it to someone's attention, and in order to, you know, keep it silent and not, you know, be a stumbling block for the rest of the church, it was silenced and it was shoved down, and that person was silenced. I mean, this even happens here on the island I live on. This happens here, present day, 2017. Someone gets touched inappropriately at church, and then it's brought to someone's attention, and then they say that they're going to deal with it. They will deal with it. You're not encouraged to speak about it because you spoke about it, and now the church will handle it. Well, guess what? The church doesn't really handle it because it continues to happen to other people all the time. I've seen it. I've experienced it. I've been touched inappropriately. You try to bring it to someone's attention, and then they don't do anything about it. It's not okay. So, Billy, I would say in the quiet of my own heart and in my own time between me and God, I've poured it all out. And I've sat there for hours on end, just me and my Bible and me, and I've wept, and I've felt very alone and very betrayed and very angry with God. And I don't want to stick a Jesus Band-Aid on this and just tell you it's going to be fine. But this is definitely, first of all, it's a serious problem. It can really hinder your recovery journey if you're unable to find within yourself a way to be completely transparent with God about what's happened. And then cultivating safe relationships in a non-religious way, in a non-religious environment, where you're able to just be yourself and be loved for who you are unconditionally and not judged, with no religiosity involved. And I'm not wanting to like shamelessly plug our communities, but I will tell you something right now, Billy. There are hundreds of us healing in private groups, fully supported, fully accepted, roll out of bed, wake up, I'm awesome. Woke up like this, I'm acceptable, I'm enough, I'm loved, I'm cared about, I'm perfect just as I am. I don't have to run on a treadmill of good works. I don't have to hustle for my worth. I don't have to pretend I'm perfect. I don't have to be religious enough or good enough or spiritual enough or whatever. I'm not saying that everywhere you go is going to be safe, Billy, but I'm saying that there are people out there in the world, I'm one of them, who cultivate and maintain safe environments where people can come and not be judged. And no one in those groups is judgmental of another person. And if they are, they get kicked out. And guess what? Most of the people that are in our groups don't want to be kicked out because they've never experienced unconditional acceptance and love before. So they don't judge other people and be unkind to other people because they don't want me to delete them from our groups. Now, I'm not saying that to be like this big bad bitch that wants to like delete people, because that's not what I am. But I am a person that wants to cultivate and maintain a safe environment for people to come be themselves and to say what's on their heart. And I struggle with this. And why am I going through this? And what's going on here? And they're not judged. Like, you shouldn't feel that way. Shame on you. Or God says this. Like, there's none of that going on. And so there are places, Billy, they're just hard to find. And I'm sensing that you're in a place in your recovery journey, Billy. By the way, can someone tag Billy? Because he asked this question last week, and I have no clue if he's here. And I want him to know what time it is in the video so he can come know that I'm talking to him. Tell him to turn on the video at like 50 minutes, 55 minutes maybe. I don't know, whatever minute it is, like a few minutes ago. But Billy, there are places where you can go. First of all, you need to feel safe. There are 3 things here, okay? There are 3 things, Billy, that are going to help you with this. Number 1, you need to find a way to feel safe. If this is a place where you feel safe, if I'm a person you feel safe with, if these people here that are in the chat box and in the comments or hanging out in this community, if you feel safe with them or you think you might feel safe with them, then go out on a limb and friend me on Facebook and ask to be plugged into a safe group filled with the same people you see here and a whole bunch of other people that are just like the ones you see here that were here and now they're in groups also. You don't have to be your real name. You can create an anonymous profile if you want to, if you don't want people to know who you are. And since our groups, Facebook calls them secret, but secret kind of sounds a little shady and weird in this community. So I'll just say that it's private. Since our groups are private, when you like a comment or you post or you react to something with like a heart or a smiley face or whatever, no one on your friends list will know where you're at. They can't even see my groups. Bobby and I created these groups so that they would be invisible. They're invisible to everyone except for the people who are in the groups. And let me tell you, something amazing happens when you show up in a place where you know you're going to be accepted. Like, it don't matter if you're late. It don't matter if you just rolled out of bed. It don't matter if you brushed your teeth. It don't matter if you showed up and you forgot to bring something to the party. It don't matter. And pardon my, casualness in my language, it doesn't matter. You show up, you're acceptable. You show up, you're received well. You show up, you're loved, period. So the 3 things are, you need to feel safe. Number 2, you need to find a way to be around others who have experienced what you've experienced in a safe way. And then number 3, you're going to need to find a way to receive support and cultivate healthy habits in your life that match up with the life you want to live. So number 1, you need to find a way to feel safe. Number 2, you need to find other people that have been through what you've been through. And number 3, you need to find a way to let out what it is that you're holding in and receive the support of other people so that you can cultivate healthy habits in your life. So that's definitely going to be helpful. And Billy, you could work with a therapist. Like if you need like a professional, some therapists, if you want somebody that's faith-based, or maybe you just want someone that's not faith-based, I don't know. But if you're looking for someone that's faith-based, there are faith-based, there's Christian counseling, and some of them are amazing. I have a couple I could refer you to that I know that are wonderful. I also have ones that are of no spiritual belief whatsoever. If you want me to refer you, I can refer you to great therapists. They work virtually, or you can go to them in person depending on where you live. And so anyway, I hope that's helpful, Billy, because you're not alone. There are so many people that struggle with the God factor, and they were raised in an environment where they're like, God is big and I am bad, and like that's just life. And let me just tell you, you guys, that's no way to live. That's just basically a way that you can barely survive. God is big, I am bad, and life sucks. That's just what it's going to do. It's just going to suck, period. And that's no way to live. So I hope that was helpful for you, Billy, and I hope that I get to see you in our groups someday. You're welcome. Consider this your formal invitation. JW Suicides says, my abuse started from a baby and it continued in a life-threatening way for nearly 50 years. Is healing still possible? I want to look at you. Let me get out of the screen and look at you. It's possible. Healing is possible. I promise you it's possible. I was abused from the time I was a baby for 30-something years, and I'm healing. You got 20 years on me, but there are people in our community who were abused for 50 years, and they're healing. They're in recovery. Abuse is something you have to recover from. Kind of like addiction, only you didn't do it to yourself and you didn't follow and do it because of a past pain. So like if you're in abuse recovery, you're in recovery. It's something that it's a process. It takes a while, but you can recover from it. You can heal, I promise. It requires healthy boundaries. If you're not in a place where you're able to establish and maintain some physical and virtual boundaries with abusive people, then healing is going to be almost impossible. Can someone tag JW Suicide and let them know I'm talking to them right now? Please. You guys are the best, by the way. I just boss you around. Like the whole time I'm here, I'm like, hey, do this, hey, do that. You guys are amazing. So thanks for not getting mad at me for bossing you around. But what I'm saying is you can heal. You can heal. I'm telling you it's possible. And there's a little bit of a caveat, like I said a moment ago. If you are not in a place where you are ready to establish and maintain some physical and virtual boundaries with the toxic people in your life, healing is going to be impossible. However, if you're ready to establish and maintain physical and virtual boundaries, at least low contact, if not no contact, okay, then healing's possible. Healing is definitely possible. And I look forward to seeing you with us because healing's possible. You guys asked the best questions. Pretty Lou, can someone tag Pretty Lou? This is still from last week. Pretty Lou says, I'm 23 and still really traumatized because I still live with my family. I can't afford to move. I'm really broke and everyone can tell. I have a public-facing job where I can't afford to be like this. I feel really bad and I cannot afford to feel that way. Oof, oh my goodness, Pretty Lou. Okay, Pretty Lou, I need you to get a therapist. I need you to, if you have a job, I hope you have some sort of insurance. I need you to find a therapist. I need you to have a healthy outlet. I need you to find a way to have a healthy outlet to be able to tell somebody what you've been through. I need you to be able to craft a narrative that explains the trauma that you've lived through, even if you don't believe it yourself. Even if you're like, did this really happen? I'm not sure, but like you think that that's what you've lived through, you need to get it out of you. It's living in you and it's festering and it's going to affect your body and your health and everything. And then once you get it out of you, then your body will be healthier and you might be able to create a little bit more financial abundance in your life so that you can get out from underneath the sort of thumb of what's happened in your family of origin. And I'm not trying to be like a conspiracy theorist or anything, but many abusers make sure that we stay financially dependent upon them. I'm not saying that's the case with you, but it's a possibility. Many abusers make sure that we are financially dependent upon them because they know that they got us. They got us, you know? Then they know that we stay stuck and that we're not going to leave. It's true. It's totally true. So I hope that's not the case with you. Please find a therapist. Find a good trauma-informed therapist. Get in some of our free groups. We have 3 free groups. We have 4 free groups, okay? We have a women's group. We have a co-ed group, men and women. We have an LGBTQI plus group. And we have a narcissistic abuse group. We have 4. Those are all free, okay? We have some other groups that are going to be paid starting up, like in the beginning of the year, like a food one and a faith one. But we have free groups. So they're free of charge. And like I was telling Billy earlier, you can make an anonymous profile if you would like. And you just need to be vetted. And we have rules and guidelines. You abide by all the rules and guidelines or else you get deleted. But you probably won't because you really want to heal. And you just need to be surrounded by people that believe you. People who will just accept you for who you are. Roll out of bed, show up. You don't have to do anything. You just show up. That's it. You don't have to do anything for anybody. You just show up and you're accepted. Show up and you're loved. You don't have to jump through a whole bunch of hoops, okay? But get yourself a good trauma-informed therapist. Please, 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 pretty please, with sugar on top because you have a job. So hopefully you have some insurance and you can get some good care. And perhaps there's a way to find maybe perhaps someone virtual that takes insurance. I've seen crazier things happen. So you deserve to heal. I want you to know that. You deserve to heal, Pretty Lou. And you're so young. You're 23. You're younger than my son. You're 2 years younger than my son. You were born in 1994, I'm betting. And I'm just telling you, you deserve to heal, Pretty Lou. Billy says, how do you challenge those core beliefs without truly feeling fake? Ooh, this is a good one. I answered it a little bit earlier. I'm going to say it again. The way we challenge those core beliefs without feeling fake is by letting out the ugly, letting out the ick, crafting that trauma narrative, all of it, all the blood, all the sweat, all the tears, all the blood, all the sweat, all the tears, all the things, okay? You let it out completely. You give it life. It deserves to be seen. It deserves a voice that it never had. It deserves to be acknowledged. It deserves it. Do it. Okay? It deserves it. We owe our trauma that much. We survived. Parts of us kept us alive. We owe it acknowledgement. You're real. I believe you. You're real. It hurt. It was real. You're real. Okay? Then we challenge our core beliefs. We craft our healthy narrative, always giving a nod to what is real, but it doesn't dominate our lives, and we get to heal. I promise you it works, you guys. I promise you this stuff works. You guys ask the best questions. Kira says, how do you mourn the dysfunctional bonds from childhood so you can start to heal? Ooh, this hurts just to even say it. Oh my gosh, I just feel like I got stabbed in the stomach right now. So mourning is something that is a process, Kira. The grieving process hurts. It hurts so bad because what it involves is acknowledging and admitting the truth of what happened to us and letting go of the need to have it be something it's not. So we write it, we let it all out, all of it. We acknowledge it, and we fully accept the bad that happened to us, and we let go of the need, the romantic need to have that fantasy life that we wish we had. And I don't say that in a disrespectful way, Kira, because we all have a fantasy of what we wish we would have had. And it's not unrealistic, like la fantasy, like I'm minimizing what it is that you're asking. What I'm saying is each of us has at least one thing in our childhood that we wish was different. We do. We wish it was different. And in order for us to move past it and move on and not be stuck, we have to release the need to change the past. Release the need to have that fairy tale. Release the need to have what we wish was different, because we'll never have it. I'll never have a loving mother that holds my hand and takes me to the park and tells me how pretty I am and how proud she is of me and asks me to go on like mommy-daughter dates to go get mani-pedis and let's go get ice cream and I just love you and you want to play board games and let's draw and I want to braid your hair and let's go roller skating. I want to teach you how to drive and I want to meet your first boyfriends and I want to share clothes with you and hang out with you and just sit and talk for hours over coffee and just sit Indian style on the floor and just talk for hours and be your friend and be your mom. Like, I'll never have that. And that hurts because I was that to my son. And my friends have mothers like that. And I now have women like that in my life that just want to invite me over and sit Indian style and just sit over coffee for 5 hours and just hear about all that's going on in the world and maybe we'll paint each other's toes. Like, I have that in my life now. But I'll never have that with my mom. You know? So there's one thing I wish was different, but I need to release the need to change that. And it hurts. I have to acknowledge it and grieve it and acknowledge that I wish it was different and release the need to change it and feel all of those feelings. I say this all the time and you guys like quote me and like think it's so funny, but you got to feel all your feels if you're ever going to heal. If we don't feel all our feels, we're never going to heal. So Kira, one of the most painful things ever is feeling all those feelings of pain, feeling all the feelings of unrealized dreams and wishes that will never come true. And that is a process. It takes a long time sometimes. So please be patient with yourself and please be kind to yourself. Please be gentle with yourself and be open to receiving those things that are beautiful later on in life that look different than what you wished they would have been when you were younger. Like the gals that want to paint toes and have Bible studies at their house and sit for 5 hours over coffee, like they're not my mom. And they're nothing like her, but they feel, it's like really, really hard. They feel a need, like a hole in my heart that I never had filled, and it doesn't look the way I wanted it to look. And it's painful. And we allow ourselves to feel those things and welcome them and thank them, and we move through them and we don't go over it, around it, or under it. I could have easily used humor as a redirect, cracked some sort of a silly joke, and avoided that completely. But I didn't, because I want to heal. And as much as it hurts, I know that the next time that comes up, it's going to hurt just a little bit less. I hope that makes sense. Thank you, Kira. That was a gift. That was painful, but I'll consider it a gift. Angela says, but what do you do when you need your family to hear you so you can finally heal? You want your family to hear you out, and they just don't. They just won't. My family doesn't hear me, and they ignore what I say, and they change the subject. Oh gosh, I just feel like I got stabbed in this chest again. Okay, Angela. Someone tag Angela M. Let me make sure I got it right. Angela M. Angela M. Oh, I've lived this, Angela. The short answer is you can't. The short answer is you can't. You can't make them hear you. You can't make them want to hear you. You can't make them stop changing the subject. You can't change the injustice that is them. But what you can do is you can find a way to feel safe. You can get surrounded by other people that have been through what you've been through. And you can learn to cultivate and maintain healthy boundaries and safe relationships in your life so that you can heal. Because there's something in you that needs to be heard and needs to be acknowledged. And just like a few moments ago when I was talking about how I wished I would have had that with my mom and I didn't. And I have it in different ways now, like by proxy in my life. Just like that, there's going to be someone, maybe in our community, maybe in a different community that you find that wants to hear your truth. And they want to validate you, and they don't want to change the subject. They want to validate you. And they want to acknowledge you, and they want to honor your truth and bear witness to your truth. And there's a part of you that needs that. And there's a part of you that thinks you need that from only your family. But that is a young part who doesn't understand that we can't control people. We can only control us. So I hope you'll find that. I hope you find that with someone that will honor you and give you that gift. Because you deserve that, Angela. Sarah says, I use the One Day Journal app, and it is fabulous. I've been journaling since I was 12. It's so good to be able to read back on your journey and see how far you've come. Such a great tool. Oh my goodness, you guys. Journaling for the win. Harriet, if you could, I forget which side it is. I think it's this side. Pop up that one video that I did on journaling. It was when I went on a field trip with everybody here, and we looked out at the ocean. We talked about journaling. So journaling is a great way to begin the journey of crafting our trauma narrative. And I've never used that particular app, but it's awesome to know that it exists. And I might check it out. Because, you know, it's always nice to have different apps to help us accomplish our goals. Productivity apps are amazing, you guys. And, you know, we really do deserve to be as productive as possible. And all the apps, you know, many of them help so much. So I want to say thank you to Sarah Hope for that. And that was all of last week's questions. And then I have a whole bunch from this week, starting with John Harvey, Heroes Don't Wear Capes, Monica Shields. Angela M. Oh, I just answered your question from last week, Angela M. I hope you got it. I hope you got my answer from last week. And then thank you to Feral Hen and Angela and Marilena. Marilena Diaz, hola, ¿cómo estás? And I have a question from Julie. I have a question from Shelly and Katie Lee and Melissa A. and Hunter and Stacy, the sparkling star. Okay, so I'm going to answer as many of these as I can in the next 9 minutes, you guys, but then I'm going to come back, and next week we're going to be in part 4 of crafting our trauma narrative and shifting into a healthy narrative and giving ourselves permission to add to and subtract from it so that it remains, when we craft it, we feel as though we are remaining in integrity with ourselves. Authentic, in integrity, congruent, okay? So John Harvey says, can you have an unhealthy narrative and not know? If so, how can you see it for yourself? Oh, this is such a good question. Someone tell John Harvey he's awesome and that he asked a good question. So how do we know if our narrative is unhealthy, right? Like, we're talking all about the healthy narrative and we're like, yeah, let's craft the healthy narrative, right? So how do we know if our narrative is unhealthy? So the way you know is if you're in a place in your life where you're constantly stuck or repeating old patterns, okay? If the story you tell yourself about your trauma is one that strips you of your power, and we've given all the power to the abuser. They did this, this happened, this happened, this happened, they did this. And then it doesn't move past that onto, and then I did, and then I chose, and then I am. And if our narrative only speaks of other, and it strips us of our power, and it doesn't have a shift in it that says, and then I did, and then I chose, and then I saw, and then I went, and then I wanted, and then I went after, and I am doing the following things, and there is growth in my life. So that's a great question. I still have times, John Harvey, where I know I show up here on YouTube and I'm healing in public, and it's like, yeah, I'm like this poster child or whatever, and people are like, oh, you think you're so awesome? Like, no, I'm healing right alongside you guys. If you're in any of our groups, you know that I show up every single week and I post a video of me melting down and sharing how horrifically challenging my therapy sessions were, or where I'm at in my healing journey, or something that knocked me upside the head and threw me sideways. And I was triggered by something, which, by the way, the same thing, like something really horrible happened on Friday. And then like I was super triggered, and then finally like I recorded about it and I put a video in, and then I was feeling totally fine like hours later after I shared. And so I recorded a silly video. So you guys, our narrative, it doesn't ever end. Like, yes, that happened to me. Yes, I was exploited. Yes, I was abused. Yes, I was bullied. I was neglected. I didn't have enough food. I wasn't paid attention to. I was trafficked and traded away and given away as many times as possible. And, you know, and there's all kinds of crazy shit. But at some point, my narrative shifts, and no longer do they, the other, have all of the power. I went to the library and I checked out books. I took a loved one to a therapist or a counselor for the first time and realized that there was such a thing. I never even knew there was such a thing until I was like almost 30 years old. I think I was 30. Was I 30? No, I was 20s. I was in my late 20s before I even knew there was a such thing as counseling. So then I'm like, oh, well, this is a thing, right? So then I go to the library and I check out all these books, and I learn about like love languages and like all these different, and then I learned about like you know, how people move through like grieving processes, and like how people do like affirmations, and then there's personal development. And I'm like at the library, my son and I, like before there was Barnes and Nobles and Borders, before we knew that that was a thing, like we would go to the library and we hung out, like we would get lost in books, and it was enlightening. And you want to know something? That is where my narrative shifts, right there. 17 years ago, my narrative shifted. I drove to the library and I picked up some books, and I decided, you know what? That's not going to be how my story ends. No. There's more to this. I can feel that there's more to this. And if I can heal from this, I can help other people heal from this. Are you kidding me? This is going to be amazing. But first, I need to raise my son and make sure that he's awesome. So I'm going to read a whole bunch of parenting books first, because I don't know how to be a parent and I want to be a good parent. So I hope that answers your question, John Harvey. It's like, if your narrative's unhealthy, you know, because we give our power away to other people. And we don't do it on purpose. Like, I know what I'll do today. I'll fuck my life up and give my power to everybody else. Like, we don't do it on purpose. We do it because it's a learned behavior. We were taught to give our power away to other people. So I'm not shaming you, John Harvey, if your narrative is in a place where you give your power away. Like, maybe you just didn't know. Like, I didn't know. I didn't know. I was in my late 20s and didn't know anything. And then all of a sudden I picked up a book and I'm like, oh. And then it took me like, how many more years? Like 7 more years. The first 7 years of my recovery journey was me trying to figure out like what a boundary was, and that there was a such thing as a boundary. And like, I was doing all this personal development, all these affirmations, and I was learning how to communicate. I was learning professional communication and you know, how to communicate in the workplace, and how to conflict resolution, and how to be a good mother, and how to like do all the things and multitask, and like learn computers and teach other people how to learn computers. And then 7 years in, it's like, boundary? What the fuck's a boundary? Like, is that a thing? And then I learned there was a thing, like the boundaries were a thing. And then magnificence began. I'm telling you, the last 10 years of my life have been the healthiest 10 years of my life, because I learned what a boundary was 10 years ago. 11, 12 years ago. Maybe it was 12 years ago. I think it was 11 years ago. I learned what a boundary was. So yeah, that's how you know that your narrative is unhealthy. If all your power is being given away to someone else, and it's always about what happened. And when the narrative turns healthy and it turns like in your direction, is when you go, and then I chose to do blank. So today could be the day that many of us shift our trauma narrative, and then I chose to do blank. So that was a little dramatic. I hope it wasn't too like overly dramatized, but that's exciting. I'm like super fired up. Heroes don't wear capes. Okay, this is the last question, guys. Heroes don't wear capes. And then next week I will start off with Monica's question on her narcissistic mother and codependent father. I got some answers. So Heroes Don't Wear Capes has a question today, last question of the night, on perfectionism. Perfectionism. I am pedantic. I am always perfectly perfecting everything. I've recently noticed it's even competitive. If there is a fellow perfectionist in my immediate world, LOL. So I'm going to channel my inner Brene Brown right now, and I'm going to say, where perfectionism lies, shame is lurking. Or what did she say in that most recent video? I just forwarded it to one of my clients. What it was it? Where perfectionism is driving, shame is riding shotgun, and fear is the annoying backseat driver. So the answer to your question about perfectionism, Heroes Don't Wear Capes, is you're ashamed of something, and it's probably family of origin related, because what the hell all of it is, right? For right now, like for all intents and purposes on this channel, where we're at in this topic, on this series, there's something about your family of origin that is, they are either illiterate, they're not well read, they're not well written, they're not good spellers, they have a lot of grammatical errors, which, by the way, light bulb, like newsflash, how many of you have noticed that the people in your life who have highly pronounced narcissistic traits tend to have a lot of grammatical errors and don't care about spelling? I've just recently had that happen. And I'm not saying that anyone who texts you with a whole bunch of like typos is a narcissist. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you have some people in your life that you've recognized over the years as having highly pronounced narcissistic traits, how many of them, as a general rule, write with tons of typos and lack of attention to grammar? I'm not saying that it makes us the pedantic, us the perfectionist, us the shame-based people who need to have everything perfect all the time are better or some superior like being. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying there's something hilarious about recognizing that sometimes the people in our lives that have highly pronounced narcissistic traits or present very narcissistic, sociopathic, cluster B, many of them are just like you become the grammar police. Like everything in you just cringes when you read something of theirs, because it's like, it's just filled with typos and grammatical errors. I'm not talking like Oxford comma, you know, one space after a period or two, like the jury's out on that. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like blatant, ridiculous. So anyway, the answer to your question, Heroes Don't Wear Capes, is shame, shame, shame. Shame, shame, I know your name. Yeah, it's shame. It's shame. There's something, I'm assuming family of origin based, regarding typos and grammar. And you're like, something in your head is like, I will never be like them. I will never be like fill in the blank, whoever it is. I will never be like so-and-so. I will make sure that at the very least, my writing is perfect. So there's some shame attached there somewhere, especially if you're identifying some perfectionism. So, which, by the way, we need to release all of that perfectionism whenever we're journaling, because we need to send our editor on a coffee break. Give them the day off if we're going to just go into a stream of consciousness and then edit later, okay? Give yourself permission to do that, you guys. You're worth it, okay? So I'm over time. I want to be respectful of your time, and I will see you back here next Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, part 4 of crafting our trauma narrative and healthy narrative, and more discussions about how to do that and how to give ourselves permission to add to and subtract from the story we tell ourselves and or others about our trauma and how it shows up in our daily lives. So you guys are amazing. You guys are so worth healing. And I'm so excited for your journey. Thank you for being here. If you're not plugged into our safe groups, friend me on Facebook. And all of my information should be here on the channel somewhere. And I look forward to connecting with you further. But next Monday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, I look forward to seeing you. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys, I think next week is only 1 hour. Okay? I don't think we're 90 minutes next week. If it's Thanksgiving week, then I'm only 60 minutes, because I got to run out the door and I have an appointment right after we record. So, and I have to drive to the other side of the island. So I'll see you next week, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here, okay? Bye, guys.